Okay, I'm so sorry about that. Apparently my recording stopped at some point and I was like 15 minutes down, not 15, but I was quite a bit down the review video and realized that I had not been recording at all. So sorry about this part 2 version. I'll try to pay attention to that record button. All right, so in this problem, okay, this is far from the slope intercept form that I would want to just do rise over run, right? So in this instance, I'm going to find my x and my y intercept. And if you remember back to this lesson, it was plugging in 0 for the variable that you're not solving for. So we want to write the equation twice. And then we want to, on the first one, solve for x. So you can go ahead and do that. You've already learned this lesson. So again, this is just kind of review. You could pause and work this ahead of me, which I would strongly encourage you to do because it's good practice. All right, solve for x means plug in 0 for y, which makes that cancel out. Divide both sides by -2, and x equals -3. But remember, that needs to be put into an ordered pair. -3, 0. Okay, now on the next equation, we need to solve for y. Okay, which means what do you plug in for x? 0. Okay, which means it goes away. -2 times 0 is 0. Divide both sides by 3, and y equals 2. So what would be the ordered pair for your y-intercept? All right, hopefully you're saying 0, 2, because you plugged in 0 for x. So now you have your 2 points and you draw your line, and you're good to go. All right, on the next slide, we're doing slope. There's 2 ways we can find slope depending on the information it gives us. On the first one, we have a graph, which is really nice. We just count rise over run. Just be careful on your sign. Make sure you recognize if it's a positive slope or a negative slope. All right, we always count rise first. And which direction are we going? If you said up, you're correct. We're going up 2 and over 6. So 2 over 6. But is that your slope? No, it is not. You've got to reduce it to 1/3. Now in this next one, I have 2 points. So there's actually 2 parts to this question on your test. The first part is going to be, what is the slope? So you're going to use your formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, -6 minus 0, don't need the parentheses, over -7 minus -7. Remember, the minus is already a part of the formula, and you're subtracting a -7. All right, which makes that a double negative. All right, so -6 minus 0 is -6. But then when I change that double negative to a positive, it's -6 over 0. So that's my slope. But now I have to answer the question, is this line horizontal, vertical, or neither? Well, just as a review, a horizontal slope will have 0 in the numerator. A vertical line will have 0 in the denominator, or an undefined slope. So this is a vertical line. All right, vertical lines are undefined, and undefined slopes have 0 in the denominator. All right, so 2 parts to that question. Okay, now on to proportional relationships. Comparing. Okay, so on your test, it's not going to be all of this, but I found a similar question so I could show you what the test question is going to look like, pretty similar. Okay, so in the problem, it says the distance that a truck, okay, y is distance, travels on x gallons is represented by this equation, y equals 18x. So it's important that you remember 18 is the rate, okay? It's 18 miles per gallon because x stands for gallons. So what I need to do to compare them to see which vehicle gets better gas mileage is I need to figure out how many gallons or how many miles per gallon of gas the car can drive. And I can see that by looking at the line. Okay, I want to look at per one. So how many miles per gallon does the car go? All right, 25 according to the graph. So distance equals 25 miles per gallon. So in the test, you're going to be given a graph and an equation, and you have to compare them. Just remember to compare the unit rate, or how much per one of your X value. So clearly, the car gets better gas mileage, and we know that by common sense too, but we need to have some proof there. Okay, so that would be like some work that I would want to see on your scratch paper. Okay, so what if you had to graph a proportional relationship? Okay, so it says the profit Y, and again, it's going to provide you with a grid to graph. It's just going to be a matter of you getting the line in the right place. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're just going to set up a quick graph here. Okay, now this part, the numbering part, you're not going to have to worry about. I know you're probably thinking, like, that came out of nowhere. I paused the recording so I wouldn't waste too much time setting up the graph. But it says my X values are my skateboards and my Y values is my profit in dollars. Okay, so really all I need to do is I just need to plug in a couple numbers here for X. This would probably be the only time you're going to use kind of like one of those tables of values. Would probably be the easiest way to see this. All right, so let's say my X value, or 0 skateboards were sold. Well, what happens when I plug in 0 for X? What's 40 times 0? Right? So if I make 0 skateboards, or if I sell 0 skateboards, I make no money. So that makes sense, and that's where that proportional relationship comes in. So what happens if I sell 1 skateboard and I plug in 1 for X? Make $40. What happens if I plug in 2 for X and I sell 2 skateboards? Make $80. Okay, so now all you have to do is just put that on the graph. And remember, guys, if it's a proportional relationship, it's gonna pass through 0. That logically makes sense. You don't sell anything, you don't make any money. You sell 1, you make $40. You sell 2, you make $80. The graph will be there for you on the test. It'll just be a matter of you plotting a couple points and drawing your line. Hopefully neater than I did. Okay, all right, so that's it for that problem. Now let's talk about X and Y intercepts. There will be a question on your test that simply says, which we've actually already done this when we graphed it, so this is almost like an easier question because you don't even have to graph it. What is the X intercept? And what's the Y intercept? So 4X plus 6Y. If you want to pause it and work this problem ahead of me, that would be great. And 4X plus 6Y equals 36. So on the first one, solve for X, plug in 0 for Y, divide by 4, and X equals 9. So your X intercept is 9, 0. All right, and then for your Y intercept, plug in 0 for X, divide by 6, and Y equals 6. So your Y intercept would be 0, 6. All right, so simple enough on that one. Okay, now we get to modeling real life, where you're probably looking at this thinking, oh my goodness, what is going on here? It's very similar to some of the problems that were in a few of our lessons. It's really not bad. Just kind of bear with me on this. And again, it's like very similar. You're going to remember me talking about these problems when you see your test. And hopefully it'll be a lot less intimidating. Okay, so on the first one, we have workers that are installing chairs, okay, at a constant rate. After 3 days, the workers still have to install 250 chairs. So how much time does it take to install the chairs? We're going to use an equation because I think it's important that we understand what's happening here. All right, we need to establish a a rate, okay? So, and what our starting point is. Right? So how many chairs have been installed? We need to do our subtraction first. So 1,000 minus 250 gives me 750 chairs that were installed in how many days? 3 days. So that would mean 250 chairs per day. Okay, so there's my rate. All right, so now let me ask you this. If you started with 1,000 and each day it's decreasing by 250 chairs, the amount, which is a good thing, but if the number is decreasing, your rate is actually negative, right? Because you're setting them up and you're getting them out of your stockpile. All right, so Y would stand for however many days or what the final time is, equals you're installing 250 chairs per day, okay? That's your rate. All right, and you started with 1,000 chairs. All right, so now we're going to just solve for X. All right, we need to get X by itself on one side of the equation. So we would just subtract 1,000. To the other side, and we do need to plug in 0 for Y because the job is complete when there are no chairs remaining, okay? So 0 would actually, I can just write it here so I don't have to rewrite the equation. All right, when I subtract 1,000, I get negative 1,000 equals negative 250x. Now it's just a simple, you just divide by negative 250, and x equals 4 days. Okay, you might be saying, did you just come up with the most complicated way to explain that? Now, that's the way that your book does it. You know, and I think it's important that we understand the rate is 250 chairs a day. I figured out the rate by doing the subtraction. You might be thinking though, okay, I know if I had 1,000 chairs to install and I'm doing 250 chairs a day, it's common sense, right? And do I really have to show this whole equation? I just divide 1,000 divided by 250. If we were in the classroom, I would probably be a lot more strict on you've got to show the equation because I do think that there's value there. And I wanted to take a minute to show you. However, if I just see this, if I just see some kind of a rate of 250 chairs a day in your notes, we're going to be good. Select the correct answer, type it in on your test, and be good to go. So don't stress over the equation, okay? But if you can at least just come away with, I understand it's this many chairs per day, I would be happy that you understood the rate. Okay, on the next one really isn't so bad. It's actually similar to your banana and apple example from this lesson. You've got this equation, 2.5x, and x stands for chapstick, plus 0.5y equals the amount of money you have, which is $7.50. And I'm sorry, not 7.5, 12. $12. There's a typo there. So just change that to 12. No big deal. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to change this one because I want it to work out to be a whole number. All right, you just have $7.50. No big deal. Okay, so here's the question. All right, X stands for chapstick, Y stands for sanitizer. You have $7.50 to spend. How much chapstick can you buy if you don't buy any hand sanitizer? So it doesn't matter that hand sanitizer is 50 cents each. It's irrelevant. You're spending nothing or a zero value for that. So now if you spend nothing there, all you have to do is just divide by how much chapstick is, and you would find that you can buy 3 sticks of chapstick. Okay, very similar to what you're going to see on your test, like very, very similar. Okay, all right, so writing an equation and then interpreting the slope and y-intercept. All right, so we've got a table of values here. It's always important when I have to do an interpretation. All right, we did one of these in this lesson. I believe it was 13.6, where we have to say what is the slope telling us and what is the y-intercept telling us. All right, so we need to understand what does y stand for and what does x stand for. So y stands for the amount in tons of waste in a landfill. And X stands for the months of the waste relocation. All right, so how many months does it take to empty the landfill? Basically, they're taking it to a different location. All right, so we need an equation. The way we do an equation is we pull out the first 2 ordered pairs and we find our slope. So we have 0, 15. And we have 6, 12. All right, and we just do our subtraction. M equals 12 minus 15 over 6 minus 0. All right, and that's going to be negative 3 over 6 or negative 1 over 2. All right, we're going to talk more about what that means in just a second. Let's go ahead and do our equation. All right, so part of this answer on the test is just going to be to say y equals, plug in your slope, negative 1/2 x, and now we go back to our table. Is there any indication here in our table what our y-intercept is going to be? Now, if you remember back to this lesson, it's wherever my x value of 0 is, the other number is my y-intercept. So plus 15. All right, so what does this mean? Well, remember, this is rise, which is my y value, over run, which is my x value. All right, what did y stand for? The amount of waste in tons. Okay, so that's good, right? That it's negative. That means I'm losing waste or I'm getting rid of waste. X stood for what? Months, right? So how many months did it take? It took 2 months. So just something along the lines of you lose or you relocate. We can use their word. You relocate 1 ton of waste every 2 months. All right, just interpreting the slope. Boom, we're done with slope. Now our y-intercept. Okay, our y-intercept says after x stands for months, right? After 0 months, so no time has passed. How many tons of waste is there? There are 15 tons of waste. You could say after 0 months, or you could say to begin with, right? No time has passed. You're starting at 15 months or 15 tons of waste that you have to get rid of. So there's your explanations. The first one, this was slope, and this was your y-intercept interpretation. All right, just being able to put that into a sentence, that really shows that you understand what the rate is telling you and also where your starting value was for your y-intercept. Okay, all right, so now we need to write an equation. Remember, you need 2 things to write an equation. You need your slope and you need your y-intercept. Well, when you have a graph, you can use a graph to find both of those pieces of information. Can you count rise over run to find your slope? Absolutely. I'm going to rise 1, 2, and run 1. So y equals 2 over 1. Rise over run, x. And now how could you find your y-intercept? Where does the line cross the y-axis, right? It crossed the y-axis at a y value of 2 plus 2. Okay, so that's it. You would just write the equation. It's going to give you a graph on the test and you write your equation. Okay, so 2 questions on your test are going to come from 13.7. Write the equation in point slope form. Just as a review, point slope, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right. So it's going to give us an ordered pair. That's my x1 and my y1 values. All right. So y minus my y1 value equals m, which is my slope, -3 times x minus x1. And that's all you're going to have to do on that problem. It says write it in point slope, so you leave it just like that. Now in this next one, it's going to say write the equation in slope-intercept form. All right, well, just like in the last slide, you need 2 things to write an equation slope-intercept. You need your slope and you need your y-intercept. So we always start with finding slope. We're going to just plug these numbers into our formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 2 over 4. Gives me 1/2. All right. Now, if one of these ordered pairs tells me the y-intercept, that's easy. I'm done. Does it? No, it doesn't, sadly. Okay, so that's where it's kind of a bummer, but you're like, ugh, I got to do point slope now. Okay, so what I do is I just pick one of my ordered pairs. It doesn't matter which one you pick, but you're just going to pick one of them, and you're going to plug it in. Y minus your y1, which one is that? It's going to be 1, equals m. That's your slope, 1/2 that you already solved for. That's why you have to do slope first. Times x minus x1. Okay, but now, this is where I stopped up here and I was like, yay, I'm done. But now it says I've got to get it down into slope-intercept form, which means I need to keep solving. Y minus 1 equals 1/2 x, and 1/2 times -4 is -2. Not quite done yet because I got to get rid of this y minus 1, so I need to add 1 to -2, and I get y equals 1/2 x minus 1. All right, and there we go. We got it in slope-intercept, so we are good to go. All right, so now we can kind of breathe a little easy because you're going to have a few review questions on your test, and I chose these because I think it'll be an easy review. Okay, so circumference and area, real basic. Circumference equals pi d. Okay, what's my diameter? 2. 3.14 times 2. And my circumference is 6.28. Will it be that easy on the test? That's it. That's all it's going to look like on the test. Okay, so that's my circumference. My area, pi r squared. So I'm just going to say A equals 3.14. Well, what's my radius? 1. So 1 squared is just 1. So my area is 3.14 feet squared. Okay, so circumference and area of a circle. All right, that's exactly what it's going to be on your test as well. All right, and then you have 2 triangle questions. You're going to find the value of x. You just need to remember that the angles of the triangle add up to 180. I believe these were kind of review questions on a couple of those homework assignments. So we just say 81 plus 25 gives us 106 plus the angle we don't know, but we know the total is 180. So we subtract 106 from both sides, and x equals 74 degrees. And that's it. Okay. Now to find if the triangles are similar, remember we have to prove that at least 2 of the angle measurements are the same measurement. Well, we have one pair for sure, but 54 and 63 don't add up. But who knows, maybe this one's 63 and maybe this one's 54. The only way we're going to know is to solve. So 117 plus x equals 180. Okay, I just added those two together to get 117. Subtract 117 from both sides, and x equals 63. Oh, beautiful, right? Because if this one's 63, I know I have 63, 63 on both, which means that one has to be 54. It has to be because the other triangle adds up to 180 also. So yes, they're similar. And this would be the work that I would want you to show on your scratch work. So, you know, there will be work to show on your scratch paper, and then there will be work that you do on your graphs on your test. If there is work to show, I'm going to have to see it in order to give you a grade. All right, and if you understand that, we should be good to go for Chapter 13, all 7 sections for your Chapter 13 test.